Hey, Mike here, and welcome to another episode of the Muscle for Life podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Today, you are going to hear Mr. Ben Pakulski, buddy of mine, cool dude, nice dude. Met him last year at a Mind Pump event that I was invited to graciously by my buddies over at Mind Pump Media. And Ben and I got along nicely. We did a couple interviews at the Mind Pump event and then followed them up with this interview, and I went on his podcast as well. And so this interview is primarily about meditation and how it has helped Ben improve every aspect of his life. But we also wander off the path and talk about the importance of focus and deep focus, some of our thoughts on consciousness, spirituality, and other things that I haven't really written or spoken much about. So I thought it was an interesting conversation. But to the main point of meditation, I wanted to get Ben on the show to talk about it because it has become very, very popular in the past decade or so, and so popular that it is easy to write it off as just another woo-woo fad, something like water fasting or cupping or lectin-free diets. I'm looking at you, Gundry. It's not, though, actually. While the health benefits of meditation are often overblown by gurus and quacks everywhere, it is hard to argue with the evidence for the subjective benefits that it can provide. Now, I myself actually don't have much personal experience with meditation. I've done a bit of it and honestly didn't notice much of a difference, but maybe that's because for as long as I can remember now, I've never really struggled with controlling my attention, controlling my thoughts, focusing. Those are all things that I've always been good at. And so for me, taking 10 minutes or 15 minutes to just focus on my breathing is not particularly difficult and honestly just kind of boring. Now, maybe I'm totally missing the point, and maybe my ideas about meditation show how unenlightened I am, really. I don't know, but that's been my experience. So I wanted to get somebody on the podcast who has had a different experience and who has done a lot more meditation than me and gotten a lot more out of it, and that is Ben. Now, if you're not familiar with Ben, he has been through some pretty intense highs and some pretty low lows in his previous life as a professional bodybuilder. He competed at the highest level, and he sacrificed a lot to do that. And now he's no longer a competitive bodybuilder. And that transition was very interesting for him because bodybuilding was everything. It was his identity. And one of the things that has really helped Ben grow as a person, and I'm talking about the inward journey here, not him as a mountain of muscle that was perpetually growing for many, many years, is meditation. And so he's going to tell us about that in this podcast, why he started, how he went about it, what he has gotten out of it. And then we kind of just meander all over the place on related things. So I hope you like the episode. This is where I would normally plug a sponsor to pay the bills, but I'm not big on promoting stuff that I don't personally use and believe in. So instead, I'm just going to quickly tell you about something of mine. Specifically, my fitness book for men, Bigger, Leaner, Stronger. Now, this book has sold over 350,000 copies in the last several years and helped thousands and thousands of guys build their best bodies ever, which is why it currently has over 3,100 reviews on Amazon with a 4.5-star average. So if you want to know the biggest lies and myths that are keeping you from achieving the lean, muscular, strong, and healthy body that you truly desire, and if you want to learn the simple science of building the ultimate male body, then you want to read Bigger, Leaner, Stronger, which you can find on all major online retailers like Amazon, Audible, iTunes, Kobo, and Google Play. Now, speaking of Audible, I should also mention that you can get the audiobook 100% free when you sign up for an Audible account, which I highly recommend that you do if you're not currently listening to audiobooks. I love them myself because they let me make the time that I spend doing stuff like commuting, prepping food, walking my dog, and so forth, so much more valuable and productive. So if you want to take Audible up on this offer and get my book for free, then simply go to www.bitly.com/freebls. And that will take you to Audible. And then you just click the sign up today and save button, create your account, and voila, you get to listen to Bigger, Leaner, Stronger for free. Alrighty, that is enough shameless plugging for now, at least. Let's get to the show. Big Ben, thanks for coming back on the show, man.
Mike, I'm so grateful that you had me on, man. You're a gentleman that I look up to from afar, and I'm grateful to always have a chance to talk to you.
Thank you. So I had a few little ideas that I wanted to pick your brain about, and that's why I wanted to ask you to come back on the show. So I'm just gonna jump right into the first one. So I thought that you had recently got into meditation. We were just talking right before we started recording. It's something you've been into for some period of time now, but you've gotten more into it recently.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. Sure. I'm curious what it does for you, and then why are you getting into it more? And you've mentioned getting more into a spiritual, or just looking more into spiritual things as opposed to just getting bigger muscles.
Sure, man. So I started meditating in 2007. So I was aspiring to be a professional bodybuilder. I wasn't professional at the time. And I had a guy who came into my life kind of by accident. He was actually a therapist, a physical therapist. And, I'm laying there on his table, he's doing some manual work on me. And, I'm telling him about my life and telling him about the problems I'm having, the stresses I'm having, and how people are, rubbing me the wrong way. There's certain people in everyone's life who rub you the wrong way. And he goes, well, why do you let them do that to you? And I was like, what do you mean? They're not doing anything. It's them. And, like getting a little snappy and defensive. And he goes, well, man, maybe that's saying more about you than you realize. Maybe the fact that you let other people influence you is something you should think about. And I was like, well, tell me more about that, asking questions. And he's basically like, well, ultimately someone outside of you shouldn't be able to influence who you are and how you act. And, the person that you are, ultimately the person you bring to the world. So he mentioned this thing about meditation and controlling your emotions and controlling your reactivity to stuff and becoming more responsive and rather than reactive. And that was really my first kind of exposure to that thought process. I just, up to that point in my life, I was 25, 26. I just kind of existed. I hadn't been aware of the reality that there was an opportunity to respond rather than react. And he's like, well, why don't you try this? Try to meditate. And so he gave me a book by Wayne Dyer, and sat down, read the book. I wasn't, that much of a student at that time. I'd been through university and such, but my passion was bodybuilding. So I thought all I had to do was lift weights and eat protein. So I read this book, and, ultimately that changed my life and made me realize that, no one or no thing outside of you should influence who you are and what you bring to a situation. And that was just my weakness as a human. And as I started to dive more into this meditation thing, I realized that I had the ability to not only control my thoughts, but control my actions, control my words. And to me, that's such a powerful place to come from, right? Like, I am in control of everything that comes out of my mouth. I'm in control of everything that goes through my mind and the way that I act, the way I react or respond. So, meditation for me started back then. Meditation in kind of spurts throughout my bodybuilding career, because you can imagine being a big bodybuilder sitting in a meditative pose wasn't a comfortable thing. And I didn't realize that was part of it, like that was part of the benefit of meditation. I think people miss that. Like, most people sit down into a, cross-legged pose on the floor, even just sitting on a chair, and they're like, oh, I can't do this for a long time. I can't. It's uncomfortable. It hurts my back, hurts my hips, whatever. That's part of the meditation. That's the ability to focus through that, to calm down your mind, calm down your nervous system through those anxious, uncomfortable situations. That's the meditation. And when I started to realize that, like, if you can't, you must, that just became this road for me that was so appealing. I'm like, God, if I can't do something, I have to. So now I literally look for situations like that where I'm like, why am I uncomfortable like this? Good, I'm going to stay here. Like, I want to learn how to breathe through this. I want to learn how to focus my mind on something other than, the massive amount of discomfort that I'm in right now. And when I finally started to see how...
What types of situations? Sorry, just
anything,
what
even
type?
sitting in a meditative pose, right? Like, can you sit cross-legged on the floor for 30 to 60 minutes? Most people are going to start getting itchy. They're going to get uncomfortable. They're going to scratch your nose, move their leg. Hips are going to start getting tight. Legs going to fall asleep. Like, realizing that all of those things are just manifestations of your mind and your nervous system.
I mean, I'd say probably even an easier place to start that still would be difficult for many people, maybe even for me, would be just sitting in a chair comfortably for 30, 60 minutes.
With a straight spine, right? Like, can you keep it arrow straight? And most people can't.
You're not watching TV. You can't. You just have to sit there and just be there comfortably for 30 to 60 minutes.
Right. Imagine the value and the power that brings to any situation. Like, Mike, you sit down and write books. You sit down and read books. You sit down and have a conversation with someone who's an employee or even your spouse. Like, the ability to be there and be present and be focused and not distracted and not picking your nose and not scratching the itch and not fidgeting, but actually being able to be there and be present in the conversation or in the situation is maybe the most powerful gift or the most powerful power that anyone could bring to a situation, man. Like, the reason you're a successful business guy, Mike, is because you have focus, and the ability to train that focus is superpower. So as soon as I kind of discovered that, which, to be honest, in its entirety wasn't until after professional bodybuilding, and I'll tell you a little bit of that story quickly, but my life has changed, man. My ability to deliver high quality, focused content, focused results, focused output, like, is tremendously different. I'm a different human being. I'm different in relationships. I'm different in business and different in everything. So, just to kind of extend that conversation, why this or how this spiritual journey kind of transcended. So, professional bodybuilder for 10 years, competed in the highest stages in the world, the Arnold, the Olympia, all that fun stuff. And I loved it, man. I loved when I was doing it. And then when it was time for me to leave, and there's many reasons why I left, my health is great. The primary catalyst for me leaving was this realization that I got to the pinnacle. I got to what I thought would have made me fulfilled and happy as a human. I got to the Olympia multiple times. I got to the Arnold multiple times. And I was not any different than the insecure boy that started. I was now a man. And ultimately, the level of insecurity that I had was still there. And it didn't make me happy. It didn't make me happy to be on stage at Olympia. It didn't make me feel fulfilled. I didn't love it anymore. So I was like, okay, well, I made it to this mountain to the top of this mountain that I thought was going to be everything I always wanted in life, and I got there and I realized, like, oh, well, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. So, well, what is? Like, what where's the journey? And then you realize that, and I think most people have this realization at some point in their life, is, you're trying to accumulate external things, whether it be money or material goods, or in my case, muscle. And you finally reach that goal that you set for yourself. I want to make $50 million, or I want to put on 100 pounds of muscle, or whatever. You get there and you go, oh, well, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. I'm not happy, and the idea of you're not fulfilled. So where does the attention turn? It almost always inevitably turns within, right? Everyone starts the spiritual journey. You notice that with every successful person in the world is they've accomplished all their external things, their material goods, and then the journey turns inside. And that's really what's happened for me.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, you had mentioned the focus point in particular, and I just wanted to really highlight that, because I agree. Cal Newport wrote a book called Deep Work that I really liked, that I recommend. Well. Yeah, yep. So I recommend anybody who's listening who hasn't read that book to read it. And I'm just curious for you. So how did that look before you had overhauled your ability to focus, and after? And I would think that bodybuilding would have trained that to some degree, right?
Sure.
I mean,
sure.
Because isn't that kind of the thing? You're in the moment, you're, working on whatever you're working on.
Man. I'm glad that you acknowledge that and you notice that. But so my training now, so my business now is muscle intelligence, and I teach people intelligent muscle building strategies and health optimization strategies. And the way I teach muscle building is a very mindful process. You have to be present. You have to be focused. It's an internal focus. Like, I'm focused on what's happening inside my body. I'm connecting with my body. Most people train completely disconnected, right? They turn the music as high as they can. They become absolutely mindless about it. So they're going through the motions mindlessly. So as much as, exercise, like many things in life, can be a meditative, focused opportunity, most people use it to disconnect rather than connect. And I think, for me now, training is meditative, man. Like, my 90% of the time, my eyes are closed. I don't have music in my ear. I'm ultimately meditating and connecting with my ability to feel my body, connect with my body. But again, like I said, most people don't do that. Most people do the exact opposite. And I really suggest that most people at least try to connect with yourself, try to use it to become a better version of yourself every single day, rather than just mindlessly blanking out, turning on whatever stimulus you can to turn off your brain, and numbing out.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that I keep in mind in my training. And I mean, sometimes I find that if I didn't sleep enough or sleep well, which is a thing these days, mostly because I have a 1 3/4-year-old who is not accepting her sleeping by herself. But I'll find that sometimes it's harder to really focus on what I'm doing, and I'll find myself sometimes going through the motion. But I'd say on the whole, that's something that I've been mindful of, is that you could say that mind muscle connection, which actually there's a bit of, I mean, I'm sure you know this, there's a bit of research that shows you might get a little performance boost out of really focusing on the muscles, at least on the smaller muscles, isolation exercises. It's a bit harder on a squat, for example, because there's so much, or a deadlift, because there's so much that's involved. But these days, I also don't train with music, and I really try to just focus on at least what the primary movers are, and maintaining proper form. And so,
But most people don't even know what that is, Mike. Like when you think about proper movers, most people don't even know how they're training. And can they feel a muscle? What is the actual action of this muscle? Am I feeling that? Like most people they just don't know. So that's what my business is, right? Is like, hey, at very least, if you're trying to build a muscle, you need to know what the function of this muscle is, or what the action of this muscle is. And you should be thinking about that. And is this muscle actually doing the work? That's all you need to focus on. Like you need to look at your setup. You need to look at curating stability, and then you're looking at, is this muscle doing the work 100% of the time? And that's your focus. It's like, am I challenging a muscle? The objective is not lifting weight, right? The objective is challenging a muscle. If your objective is building muscle, so obviously, if you're trying to lift weight to be a powerlifter, a different thing. But if you're trying to build muscle, build a physique, the only objective is challenging muscle. So the only thing you should be thinking about is this muscle, and the reality that this muscle has two ends, right? You have an origin insertion, that doesn't matter, but it has two ends. One end has to stay completely stable, meaning not moving at all, and the other end is moving. And one end, it's ultimately bringing the insertion closer to the origin. That's it. If you're thinking about something other than that, you're missing it.
Yeah, and I'd say that the easiest place to start for anybody listening with that is just keeping your mind on what you're doing. Just do what you're doing when you're doing it, and that's a good place to at least begin, where you're not, even if you're just doing curls or something, it's not a difficult exercise per se. Keep your attention on, I mean, for me, for example, if I'm doing curls, I have my attention on what are the prime movers here. So I have my biceps. Usually I have my attention a little bit on my grip, keeping my grip strong, and then just form, and not work, not if I had an argument with my wife the night before, if we're disputing over something, I'm not thinking about that or anything else that might be popping in my mind. Really just try to, when I'm in the gym, I'm in the gym. And I guess that's also something that has served me well in my work, because I tend to be that way with my work as well. No matter what's happening in my life, good or bad, when I'm working, and I'm rarely allowing my attention to stray off to anything else. And when I'm done working, then I can go put my attention on these other things.
Yeah, you're 100% present, man. You're anchored, right? And that's something I teach as well, man. It's like, take 3 to 5 minutes before you train. Take 3 to 5 minutes before you go into work. Take 3 to 5 minutes before you go into your home, and become the person you need to become to optimize that scenario, right? Is you're anchoring yourself to that person. So I can't be the same person I am in the gym as I am when I go home to my beautiful 5-year-old daughter. Right. So how do I anchor that? Well, I think everyone needs to take that 3 to 5 minutes and breathe, man, and create that person you are in your mind. And that's a meditation session. That's literally all meditation is, right? Is either I'm going to create my mind first, or the world's going to create it for me. And you never want to go into a situation, like I can't go into my home and have dinner with my amazing family being the same person I am in the gym or in my business. It's a disconnect. So I have to make sure that I'm anchoring that scenario. And you're obviously doing that naturally, Mike, and realizing that to become the best athlete in the world, or one of the best bodybuilders in the world, I had to become a very particular personality, a very particular character to do that. So, there's to be a massive disconnect if I went home and I was still that kind of ruthless, angry, driven person in front of my family. It wouldn't, to me, just wouldn't make sense. So that's a big thing for people to start to realize is start creating avatars, man. Start creating the avatar you need to be at work. You're a leader. You're a charismatic business owner. You're whatever, man. You're someone who dominates business and life. You better not damn well be that person when you go home and spend some romantic time with your wife.
Do you find it's hard to switch between those different hats, so to speak? Because I have, absolutely. Like it's hard to turn some of that stuff off.
It's hard to start. Like anything, right? The first time you do it, you're like, God, this is impossible. But after a while, it's the only way that I know how to be now. It's like, I literally anchored myself as I stick my key into the door in my house. Like, I'm changing. I'm wearing a different hat. The movie that comes to mind is like Over the Top with Sylvester Stallone, right? He turns the hat around backwards and you guys are all fucked. It's like, what? Well, that's the same thing that happens in the gym, right? I come in the gym and what's happening? Well, I intentionally always change my clothes before I go and train. I'll never wear my gym clothes to the gym. I'll always come in the gym and I'll get changed. I'm anchoring that state, and it could be anything as simple as like when I grab the door handle of the gym, like, I'm anchoring that, or maybe I'm sitting in my car before I go into the gym. Like, you have to anchor that. And maybe it's a song, maybe it's a smell, maybe it's a taste. Like, you can anchor your emotions to these different people, these different avatars, and ultimately create that person that you need to dominate that situation or be the best you possibly can in that situation. And I think that's, again, complete sidetrack from the conversation we want to have, but I think it's a very interesting thing for people to think about. Like, you shouldn't be the same person when you're reading a book, and you should be in student mode than when you're doing a set of squats. We have to acknowledge that those are different people. Ultimately, those are different versions of your personality. So how do you anchor those things? Well, it could be as simple as 3 to 5 breaths and a little bit of conscious intention to say, hey, this is where my mind needs to be now. I need to be in the point where I'm absorbing this information in this book, or I need to be in the point where I'm giving 100% effort on my nervous system when I'm squatting. And I hope everyone can acknowledge those are different. And if you really want to succeed at life, it's important to start creating avatars.
Have you done that consciously? Have you written down, these are my different, how do those look?
I only have 3, man. I only have 3. It's business, home, and training. That's it. So I try to keep it simple because obviously I could create 100 of them if I wanted to, but really most of my life is relatively the same person, right? Like now in business, I can be kind of the same person that I am at home. Because with my team, I can be the same person I am with my family, similar.
Really? I found that I've fallen into the bad habit in the past. I'm better with it now. I say I'm much better with it now. Not that I don't think I was particularly bad, but I would tend to still have my boss hat on at home. You know what I mean? In certain situations where I would expect my wife to get certain things done in the way that I would expect people
I learned that the hard way, man.
You know what I mean? Like, why isn't this done? Why isn't that cleaned up? What's going on with this? Where at the office, even those types of communication are totally acceptable, especially with the people that I work with. They're not very sensitive people, and they understand that. Also, my personality, I tend to be, I think in general, I wouldn't say harsh, is maybe. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that makes me sound better than it is. But like I'm a blunt person in general, and I appreciate people being the same way with me. So sometimes I'll communicate something it's completely not sugar coated, and maybe it sounds a bit more harsh than even I mean it to be. But anyways, my point is, so that's one way to operate at work. But that does not work at home. And so I've had to consciously just change that and use maybe a different approach, a softer approach with my wife than I would with my employees. I'm sure, how has that been for you?
I learned that the hard way, man. But mine tends to go the other way, where I tend to come in and be too soft on my employees. But I found as long as I give them very clear marching orders and they're meeting expectations, then everybody wins, right? And my only limitation happens if I don't give them very clear objectives and manage expectations. So as long as I'm doing that well, everybody wins, man. I could be kind, I could be nice, and they're getting their job done. And if they're not, then they're not going to be on the team for long. It's really that cut and dry. But I've learned to not take my work home as much. Certainly, again, it still happens, man. We all have stresses sometimes, but I'll tell you, I'm very good now at not bringing that shit home. And ultimately, you can't be the same person, man. Like if I go into a business meeting where I'm talking about investment or I'm talking about bringing on, shareholders or I can't be the same person. Like that would be a big problem if I wanted to start talking to my shareholders as I was with my 5-year-old, So, yeah, I think if you want to be successful in anything, you must practice these things. And I'm at the point now, like I say, where it's almost as simple as 2 or 3 breaths. So I'll give an example, Mike, is like if I tell you to quickly think of a situation where you were joyful or you had a sense of achievement. At first, it's kind of hard to do that. You're like, oh, give me a second. Let me think about that. But if you do it every day, then you have the same list of like 2 or 3 scenarios where you're like, God, that was so awesome. And like if I just said, think of your daughter's smile, your child's smile, whatever it is, right? Like, oh, okay, that's joyful. That's all it takes. It's like, hey, now I just bring that feeling back into my nervous system. And now I feel that. And now I can walk into any scenario and have this overwhelming sense of gratitude and joy as I walk through the door. But I just created that in my mind rather than bringing the bullshit with me that I had at work from, something happening business wise or something not going my way. I just literally anchored that situation in, 3 to 5 breaths. It's literally an instant. So, it's just practice, man. Like, and at the same time, if I want to bring back that ruthless guy who fucking destroyed people in the gym for 20 years, I can bring that back. I can go there in a second because I did it so many times. Like I know what that feels like. To go back there, and that's just a few breaths and a few thoughts away, and like bang, it's there. And I think that's a powerful superpower.
Yeah, I agree. You'd mentioned earlier that so in bodybuilding, you had kind of achieved your goal, and it didn't fulfill you maybe in the way that you thought it was going to going into it. What does that mean for you now? Because I mean, I've had that experience multiple times in in multiple aspects of my life, but just taking my work, I have fully accepted that there's no, there's satisfaction that comes with accomplishing things, but in terms of happiness, I don't think there's. I don't think that I am going to be happy. I don't think it's a good idea to think in the way of like, oh, I'll be happy when blah, especially if it is related to some external thing, whether it's money or recognition or any of the other many ways
Sure,
you can measure, quote unquote.
What keeps you driven then, Mike?
For me, I would say there are a few things. I have like a 3 to 5 year plan that I'm working on. That is very like my number one focus right now is my career and my work. And there are different elements of it. There are financial elements. There are just kind of personal satisfaction. Oh, it would be cool to, like for example, I recently rewrote from scratch I think I sent the men's book to you, right? My books for men and women.
I didn't see it. I didn't get it if you did, but
oh really?
Hopefully I'll have it.
I would like to send you one. Really? I think we must have gone back and forth. Maybe the email chain got dropped or something, but I'll make a note of that. There we go. And so there are, and I'm really proud of where these books are at now. This is the 3rd edition, and there have been multiple iterations, not just 3, because there was the 1st edition, and there was kind of like 1.1 and then 1.2. And so I'm very proud of these books. And so there are some other just kind of, I don't know, personal milestones that would be cool, things that I'd be proud of where I go, that's neat. I just like that. And then there's the personal element of it's nice to see what my work is doing in people's lives. And I get to see that directly via emails with people and social media messages with people. And I bring once a month, I bring someone on my podcast who either has read one of my books and applied it and gotten great results, or gone through my coaching service and gotten great results. So it's cool just to connect with people. And I found that matters now. Like that, let's just say that is more emotionally satisfying. Just getting an email from someone that is saying, hey, I just want to let you know, I read your book a year ago and it changed my life, and here's how. And even if it's just a few paragraphs, keep doing what you're doing. Thank you, kind of thing, is more emotionally satisfying than any amount of money in my bank account, honestly.
Dude, no question. So I just got back from a month in Australia, and I planned kind of this synergy of going over there to do some seminars and bring my family over. So we got a vacation out of it. And, we put up this group of seminars, 3 seminars in 3 weeks, and, sold them out relatively quickly, which was, gratifying in itself to realize that we have such a massive following over in Australia. And then being there, like walking into these ridiculously remote places and having, people come up and go, man, you changed my life. In the most, like in the gym, yes, like, you get 20 or 30 people in almost every gym we went to, but it's like walking into, I was 3 hours north of the most remote city in Australia, and some dude walked up to me when I was walking down a trail, and I'm like, wow, like, and he's like, oh man, I've been doing your stuff since 2011, and everything you do changes my life. I still follow everything you do, and you're just like, wow, like, fuck. How would I expect to see somebody here? Like, we were like doing a nature walk with my kids, man, and that stuff is incredibly powerful to hear.
Yeah, I totally agree. And so there's that for me. And then I also just kind of like to win. You know what I mean? Like if I'm doing it, just if you're just doing something and you're winning, it's obviously inherently fun. And I would say feeling like I'm, I have a family, so that also has been a good shift for me as a person, because growing up, I was always someone that did exactly what I wanted to do, and I was kind of a selfish person, for sure.
Preaching to the choir, man.
Yeah, so I think it's good for me to. I have 2 kids, and so there's an element of duty that comes with it in terms of being a provider, right? So it's one of those things where there's a part of me that would be satisfied doing any sort of work whatsoever, simply because, one, I enjoy working. It's a kind of a flow activity for me. Talk about focus, right? Like you get that. I like that feeling when you're fully focused on something, and you kind of lose track of time, and you are enjoying doing what you're doing just for the sake of doing it. And for me, most types of work is a flow activity, especially that deeper work where you really can focus. If it's blasting through a couple hundred emails, even that though, actually, now that I think about it, I've done it so many times. There's a flow to that. I guess some types of work don't lend themselves too well to that. Maybe some sort of like dysfunctional meetings and shit are just kind of annoying. But a lot of work for me is I just enjoy it for what it is. And so having that feeling that I'm serving something greater than me, I guess is probably also something I've realized that for me that matters, and it matters more than money. Like I'm more interested in serving a cause than just making money so I can have shiny things.
Yeah.
What about you?
Well, it's funny you bring that up, man. So, as I told you, I've recently started taking on a bunch of mentoring clients. So, like my fitness business is relatively well known, and made a lot of mistakes, like as I'm sure you have, and taking on business coaching clients, mentoring clients. And the first thing I make everybody do, and something I've done myself, is create your 25-year vista. And so, like everyone's like, "Oh, I'm doing a 5-year plan, I'm doing a 10-year plan." That's great, and I think those are very, very important. Those are definitely an aspect of it. But when you try to think 25 years ahead, most people are like, "I can't do that." Like, good, do it. So, how long is it going to take you to accumulate? Say I need to make, 50 million is my number. I'm going to make 50 million bucks. Okay, great. How long is it going to take you? 10 years, 15 years. Okay, great. What happens after? That's always the question, right? Is like, because I've seen the top of the mountain, and I realize that there's always another summit. There's always another mountain after that. Well, so this first mountain that we have in the front of our mind, maybe 3 to 5 or 10 or 15 years away, but what happens after that? And I want people to start thinking about that, because that ultimately, in my eyes, is their true vision, their true purpose. So once you've transcended this big mountain that's in front of you, this external mountain where you're like, hey man, I want a plane, and I want a boat, and I want a car, and I want a house in this place and this place, and I want to have this much money, and I want to feel secure. Awesome. You got it. Snap my fingers. It's yours. What's after that? And that, I think, is when you actually start to find people's true passion and purpose, is when you get their brain to transcend the need for comfort and security. So once I've accumulated comfort and security, awesome, you got that now. Well, then what? And it almost seems like the inevitable succession after that is helping people, right? But how? And getting people to get clear on that's where you really start to find your true purpose and your true passion. So for me, my 25-year plan literally includes. So when I started my fitness business in 2011, my vision was to be the catalyst for intelligent muscle building around the world. And if you ask most people in the fitness industry who is synonymous with actually intelligent muscle building, it's me. It's our business. So I think we've done that, and we've become the catalyst. And now you realize that there's millions of people out there, maybe hundreds of thousands of people, teaching this intelligent approach to fitness. And I certainly couldn't say that I was the only guy that started it, but when we started, we were probably the only one that anyone had heard about. So that's a cool thing to realize that we were a big part of that. And now it's like, okay, well, how do we actually change the paradigm of the entire fitness industry, man? Because you still have to admit, and you get this, that probably 80 to 90% of people out there have absolutely no clue what they're doing. And if you gave me 5 minutes with them, I could change the course of their life forever when it comes to understanding how to empower them with the knowledge and skill set to change their body. So 5 minutes in the gym, I'll give you the understanding of like what you actually have to do to train that body part, to build that body part. Okay, well, great, that's cool, but I can't be in the gym with everybody at the same time. So how do we create something that's powerful enough to give everyone the internal belief that they have the ability to change their body? And it starts with like changing the paradigm of the next generation, man, the 12, 13, 15-year-old kids who ultimately go into high school gyms and no idea what they're doing, creating bad habits, creating eating disorders, creating insecurities because they don't love their body. They don't feel like they have the ability to control their body. So they don't take ownership over it. They put all the power outside of themselves, right? They blame their genetics, they blame their environment, they blame their past. So I love the idea of empowering the next generation with the knowledge and skill set to change their body, to believe that they have the ability to do anything, man. So, hey, you want to build muscle? No problem. You want to lose fat? No problem. You want to learn how to love your body? No problem. Here's how you do it. Want to learn how to overcome anxiety and stress? No problem. Here's how you do it. Like, that's where we need to be looking, man. At least for my belief is like, if we're going to really change the scope of the world, the direction of the world, you have to start with the young generation, man. Like, the older generation is obviously the catalyst for it, and we can certainly lead. But I think if I'm going to really do, leave a dent on the rock, it's got to be by shifting the thought process and the paradigm of the teenage generation and their belief that, hey, man, you can do any of this thing. So, think about the potential effect of that, right? Like less bullying, less insecurities, less gang potential, and these are all maybe lofty, wild dreams. But I really believe that if you give people confidence in their body, they feel ownership over who they are. Like, I think we empower them to take ownership for their life, every aspect of their life. So that's kind of what my purpose is now.
And how do you plan on going about doing that?
Well, I have a unique distribution mechanism that I'm not going to share because if I share it, it may go away. But I'll share it with you after the call.
Cool. So you do have a plan, though. I like it.
Oh yeah, of course.
Awesome.
It's just a matter of executing.
Yeah. Cool. Well, yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it's a matter of being proactive, right? So there are a lot of people who are having a lot of health problems now that hopefully the younger generations are not. Hopefully, they're not just going to repeat the exact same mistakes. Hopefully, we can learn from I'd say the driving factors of the obesity crisis, right?
But even if you didn't change their diet, even if you just went like, hey, man, if you just exercise a little bit, or if you walk,
that's what I mean. Yeah.
So
I mean, so if it was as simple as
for
the average kid out there, for the average teenage kid, and I hear from teenagers fairly often, who usually the ones I hear from, they've seen the YouTube videos of these random idiots who are on steroids. They don't talk about it, of course, but you have some 19, 20-year-old kid who he's been on drugs for a few years, and has, probably has an eating disorder and sits in the gym 2 hours a day and looks good, and runs around showing off, all the attention he gets from girls and blah, blah, blah. And so I hear from teenagers who write me and ask, how do they get a six pack, or how do they look like this guy? Right. And so my advice is always don't, like, one, I usually have some stuff I've written and recorded on steroid use, and I'll send that to them and like, here, first read this or listen to this so you understand what you're actually looking at and why I don't recommend that you go down that same road. And it also will help with expectations. Let's change the expectations and make them a bit more realistic. And then also, you're 16. Right now you should focus on, you could say exercise, but I always ask, do you enjoy sports? Great. So just do that. Like sports, if you want to get into some weightlifting, I think it's smart. And you want to put in, a simple strength training program, or just a barbell centric program, start building some muscle, start getting strong. And as far as diet goes, don't get into, save the eating disorders for later. Don't get into the never ending calorie deficits and always trying to be as lean as possible, especially at your age, for physiological and psychological reasons. Let's just focus on eating, a bunch of nutritious foods, and eat according to your appetite. And you can follow some simple guidelines. That's the kind of stuff.
I think it's so much harder than that, though, right? Like, so most people don't eat because they're hungry. Because either they're trying to mask the feeling in their body. So if I have this constant feeling of anxiety in my body and I take in some food that makes that go away, I've had a net positive result in my physiological feeling in my body. So guess what? Well, now I want to always chase that net feeling, net improvement in my body. So most people aren't eating because they're hungry. Their choices are not conscious, right? So we have to start with like, okay, well, what are the triggers? Well, I know that you have anxiety. Well, why do you have anxiety? Well, because who knows? I'm stressed. I don't know. I've never been taught an internal mechanism of dealing with anxiety and stress. I have a 12-year-old stepson. He comes to me 2 years ago. He goes, "Hey, man, I have anxiety." I said, "Okay, buddy, let's talk about that. What does that mean?" I have anxiety. Now you're just giving yourself a possessive. I have this. No, you don't. You don't have anxiety. First of all, let's change your words. You get anxiety. You don't have anything. You get it. Okay, let's do that. I get anxiety. Why do you get anxiety? Well, because I'm a little bit stressed about something. Okay, well, how do we deal with that? Do we give him a pill? Like, as a parent, what do I teach him as a coping mechanism? Do I go, "Hey, man, you probably need a Xanax," or "Hey, man, you probably need, I don't know, theanine or something"? No, it's not that. Like, "Hey, man, how about we sit down and we first discover what the root of this is, what the trigger is. Second, let's give you a coping mechanism." So do I just throw him a tub of Ben and Jerry's and go, "Hey, man, this will make you feel better"? No, I go, "Let's sit down and let's breathe together, man." I'll set him on my lap and I'll put him chest to chest or chest to back or whatever. And I'll be like, "Hey, man, I want you to feel my calmness. I want you to," and this may sound weird, but like, if it's a child, it's your child. And you're like, "I just want you to feel better. And I want you to realize that, like, the ability to change this is within you." So if we sit down and we breathe for 5 minutes, all of a sudden he goes, "Oh, that was really uncomfortable and I hated that, but my anxiety's gone." So the next time, okay, maybe now it only takes 3 minutes, and then subsequent times, okay, now I can get rid of that in 60 seconds or less. So you've just empowered him with the belief to go, "Oh, I can get rid of that, and it's not some bullshit outside of me. Like, I got to go smoke a joint, or I got to smoke a cigarette, or I got to take a shot of alcohol." Now it's an internal coping mechanism. That's what people need to be empowered with. And that's why I've taken this stance toward this spiritual journey, man, because ultimately our physiological being is just a result of our chemical state in our mind for the most part, right? Some people have obviously genetic predisposition to certain chemical scenarios, which again, I'm not an expert on that stuff, and that needs to be dealt with accordingly. But most people, I'd say 90-95% of people, it's just a chemical response to your environment or your situation. So how do we change that? Well, create a coping mechanism, man. Is it going to be easy and massively effective the first time? No, it's going to be hard. Say fucking good. Say thank you. It's hard because now I know I'm getting better. And then in 3 months, all of a sudden, God, I can breathe away my anxiety in 5 breaths. Now I've got an internal locus of control. I've got self-confidence that I know I can change anything in my life. This is the kind of shit people need to be talking about with their kids.
I totally agree. That's a great point. And for people listening, if you want to see it firsthand, you can use, I think they call it the box breathing technique, right?
Yeah.
4 seconds in, hold it for 4 seconds, 4 seconds out. I actually like to do that unless I'm very tired and I'm just out at night. If I'm not asleep within, I don't know, 10 minutes or so, I'll do that at night just to calm my body down, just because,
Totally.
I mean, usually I'm okay at night. It's not like my mind's racing or anything. It's just, I'm not asleep yet. So, it's, I think, even though I'm not doing it formally, but there's body scanning, right? So usually I'm just relaxing. I'm trying to relax all the muscles in my body, including my jaw. Like, I'd notice that I'd usually just sit there with kind of a tensed up face,
Totally.
relax all the muscles in my face, relax all the muscles in my body, and just do kind of slow, controlled breathing. And it's a nice relaxing way to fall asleep, if nothing else.
Yeah, man. And that's where everyone holds their tension, right? It's either your jaw. So they suggest like the back of your throat, your jaw, or your shoulders are going to be the most common places for holding tension. And it's literally just as simple as like, hey man, pay attention to it. Like if you can do that, you can change it. And that's why I think, again, coming back to meditation, like that's what meditation is for me. It's like this daily inventory of my body. Like, what am I doing? I'm like, am I clenching my jaw? Okay, well, let's stop doing that. Am I furrowing my eyebrow? Well, stop doing that. Like, and it's just like, oh, I can start paying attention and realizing I can control it. It's powerful, man.
Yeah, I pay attention to my facial expressions as well. Because, there's research on that if simply smiling or frowning will affect your mood. Generally speaking, 1,000%. Of course, it's not everybody all the time, but that's just like a good rule of thumb. If you're sitting there frowning, if you just start smiling, force yourself to smile, you will probably feel better immediately.
Man, I don't even open my eyes in the morning until I smile. And I'll tell you my routine. It's kind of funny. I'm very blessed to have, 3 young kids who are just amazing. And so before I even open my eyes, I do 3 minutes of gratitude in my bed, and I start with things that are close to me. So usually it's my wife, and then it's my kids, and it's my house, and it's my business, and then it's my employees and my team. And you're going through this kind of circle, this ever expanding circle, and you do your 3 minutes. And by the time you're done that, man, I'm so overwhelmed with gratitude. My first emotion is always a massive smile. And then, God, things are good, man. Like, rather than starting the day going, oh, fuck, what do I have to do today? I haven't got out of bed before I put myself into a state of going, my life is really, really blessed. No matter how shit things are after that, you still started your day with this massive smile. You can end your day with this massive smile. And then all of a sudden, hey, man, what happens in between? I can't always control it, but I can certainly control the way I start and the way I finish. And I mean, chances are what I've noticed is the things that happen in between start to go a little bit more positively when you start and finish your day with that positive sense of gratitude.
Yeah. I've been doing something similar for some time now, which is just 3 things that I'm thankful for. I just keep it simple. I usually do it when I get to the office, though. I put them in a spreadsheet because I don't know. OCD.
Yeah, it's your brain. That's all right, man. Whatever it takes, right?
So tell me a bit about just your spiritual, like, what does that mean to you? I'm curious. Because you say that, but then at the same time, do you think that we're just brains and we're just squirts of chemicals, or where are you at in terms of spirituality?
Good question, man.
Like, have you taken it further than meditation? It sounds like you have.
Well, as far as what? Like,
well, I mean, have you?
Most people want to go down the psychedelic route.
I'm actually personally not interested. Yeah. I think that, I mean, this is me. Maybe it's just because for whatever reason, I've never been interested in drugs. I've never even been drunk. I just don't care about drugs at all whatsoever. So I'm biased, and I actually couldn't even tell you exactly why, but I'm biased in that way. However, I wouldn't be surprised if, and it's cliche to quote Jordan Peterson, but I wouldn't be surprised if his take on it, that at least his take resonates more with me, which is there are interesting things that can happen, yes, with these drugs, but it seems to be a cheat of sorts in terms of accessing states that otherwise you couldn't access. And you do that enough, you cheat enough, and there are consequences, basically.
Oh, no question, man. And I'll tell you, very similar to you, man. I grew up, very religious. I grew up in a family of alcoholics, actually. And so for that reason, I never drank. I didn't do drugs, never smoked weed, none of that shit. It just wasn't my thing. And since now, being 37 years old, I have tried psychedelics, and I do see benefits. And it's because I have a belief that now I'm in control. I have the ability to choose consciously and not want to do it multiple times, that I can choose as a consenting adult and say, hey man, like I want to try this and see what it does. There's definitely benefits, but I can also see how people just use it as an escape, right? So are you using it to challenge yourself and grow as a human, or are you doing it as an escape? And I'd say a large percentage of people are just doing it to change the state, man. Like nobody smokes a joint because they want to expand their consciousness. They smoke a joint because they want to feel better. And cool, if that's what you want to do. That's not my thing. But so, again, not going down the route of psychedelics. But so, man, my spirituality is exploring me, exploring who I am, why I'm meant to be here. Is there other things that exist that we don't know about? First of all, I think it starts with knowing yourself. So, what are my unconscious beliefs? What are the things holding me back from living my true happiness? Who am I inside? What do I feel like I am at my core? And how do I allow that to live its fullest? Meaning, The person that we are now, Ben Pakulski, for whatever that name that somebody put on me as a child, is just the set of stories that I've told myself up to this point, the set of activities and experiences that I've had up to this point. That's who ultimately I've become, or at least the personality that I've developed in response to all these situations that I've had. So is that actually who I am, or is that who I've become to be accepted in this world, right? So as a child, you find out, hey man, if you say this word, you get in trouble. So you don't say that word. If you act this way, people don't love you. So you don't act that way. So you develop this personality that's a reflection of whatever it took for you to belong in society. So whatever it took for you to get love. Was that really who I am? Is that really what makes me fulfilled? Is that really why I'm on this earth? So that's really where my journey is, man. It's like, okay, let's rewind all this and let's unravel all these BS stories that I put on myself about who my family is and why I can't do certain things and why I do certain things, and really just explore who I am at my core and why I'm on this earth. And for me, that's the spiritual journey, is I'm starting to just peel back the layers of the onion.
Yeah.
When you peel back one layer, there's another one there, and keep going deeper and deeper. And the reason I think psychedelics are a useful tool is because, yes, it is going to accelerate that journey. And as long as it's the realization that it's not meant to be like this perpetual thing, if I do psychedelics, it's like, once a year or something. And then so you do it and you see things and you're like, hey man, okay, now I'm aware of this. I'm aware of what's going on there. And then now I spend the next 12 months trying to meditate on that and understand it. And what was that I saw? And how can I explore that consciously? And you realize like, yeah, I can reach these psychedelic states or these altered states without psychedelics. Oh, okay. Now I can access that stuff in my meditation. I can, access different brain states through meditation. Well, that's a powerful place. But had I not seen it in meditation or say in psychedelics, I don't know that I've ever got there. So again,
what's an example of that? I'm genuinely curious.
Well,
if there's
like
one that you wouldn't mind sharing.
Yeah, man, no problem. I'll share anything. I'm an open book. An altered state of consciousness, meaning you're in a state of meditation and you leave your body, and so you're ultimately awake, aware of your body, but you are not your body. So you're outside.
So you're saying that's like a specific example of something that you were like, holy shit, what?
Yeah, that's an altered state, right? So. Yeah. Like that would be a similar experience that you may have if you're taking a psychedelic, like this exiting of your physical body and realizing that you're this energetic being that lives in a body. You are not your body. You live in a body, and you step outside your body, you watch your body, and it's sitting there. You're like, oh, okay, this is interesting. Why is this happening? And how can I explore this a little bit more? And then, the idea that, what happens when your body goes away? Who knows? But does the energetic being that lives inside it go away, or does that just change forms? Who knows? I don't know the answer. We could claim that's a little bit, out there, a little bit woo-woo, but like, I don't fucking know the answer. I don't think anyone will ever know the answer. It's just about your beliefs. So, explore it. Why not? See what happens. And I think the idea of having creative exploration of these altered states is very interesting. So once
what do you think that means? I'm sure that if having that experience led you to at least start reading up on, well, what do other people say about this,
sure.
or what is, because that's like it could be in the sciences, or it could be in religion, be more of the Eastern tradition, right. Obviously something more like, have you looked into Buddhism or what? Yeah. I'm just curious, what are your thoughts? What do you think that means?
My greatest influence on that thought process is a guy named Wayne Dyer. Ironically, the first book I ever read when it comes to, spirituality and self-improvement was 2007. And I still to this day, he's the greatest influence on my life. And I listened to a podcast he did last week with Oprah, and again, opened up my mind to this whole new realm of possibility of what life really is. But he gets into the thoughts of, the irony of Wayne is he's extremely spiritual, but he's also very religious. He's a big believer in God, the Bible, but he's also very spiritual. And this idea of this physical body is a physical manifestation of energy, and the energetic being that exists inside of it exists without the body. So when I go to sleep at night, what goes to sleep? Well, my body goes to sleep. My consciousness still lives there. It's still awake. It's still, you still can access consciousness when you're asleep. So you can actually train yourself to ultimately be completely conscious while your physical body sleeps. They've proven that. So now that gives us a good idea that, hey, maybe this consciousness actually could exist without this physical form. So, okay, well, if that's the case, maybe then after this body tires out, expires, the mitochondria can no longer produce energy. well, where does consciousness go? Maybe it could continue to live on. Maybe it needs to find a new being to exist in. Maybe it can exist in a different dimension, in a different realm. Who knows? With our five senses, we're limited to what our five senses can feel and sense. So maybe there's things that exist beyond our five senses. And that to me is just a fascinating exploration. And that's why I believe now the journey has to be within, man. That's the only thing worth exploring, is this internal dialogue with yourself about who you really are at your core, and what is fulfilling to that being, and how can you provide greater value to the species, to humanity. Ultimately, we're the laziest generation of this human species ever. Well, how can we change that? How can we help this species actually evolve rather than devolve? It's a very interesting conversation that I ultimately don't have any answers to, man. I'm just exploring what my fulfillment looks like, what my passion is now. How can I be a contributing member to the species?
Yeah, I mean, you could imagine if that were true, that changes everything. I mean, if that were true, if we
consciousness lives on.
Yeah. And are you familiar with the reincarnation research that is coming out of UVA?
No, I'm not.
Oh, dude, you should look into it. So it was started by, I want to say his name was Ian Stevenson.
Okay.
And it was his life's work. Prestigious scientist, like published in major journals, decades of work, decades of case studies all around the world. And so he died some time ago, but his work was carried on by his protege, Jim Tucker. Stevenson wrote books, Tucker has written books, and the team has grown to several individuals. I don't know exactly how many now. I listened to, it was a lecture. There was, I don't know, maybe a panel of 5 or so, and that was a lecture that they gave a year or two ago. And so basically, you go check it out, Ben. You'll find it fascinating. Anybody listening, you can just Google UVA reincarnation research and find all kinds of stuff on it. But basically what they have is they have thousands and thousands of case studies, mostly with children, younger children. It's most common for them to talk about having lived before, right? So it could be a kid. And there are, I'd say, themes, and these themes are consistent everywhere in the world. Different cultures, doesn't matter. So they might be talking about, you might have a 4-year-old. Your 4-year-old might come up to you one day and say, "Hey, how's my family doing?" And you're like, "What do you mean?" And they say, "Oh, well, my wife, Mary, and my kids, Billy, and I'll say Romy, my daughter." Mm-hmm. and you're like, what are you talking about? And they'll tell you a story about how they, this is what they were doing last lifetime, and this is what happened to them. And so they have thousands and thousands of these. But what is even more interesting is that about half of them, I want to say 1,800, are solved cases. Meaning, so it starts with something like that, and then the team gets information from, again, this is like a 4, 5, 6-year-old kid, and then goes and verifies everything that they were saying and finds who they were in their previous life, and finds, oh yes, this person, so-and-so, was married to Mary and did have the 2 kids. And so there was like one particular case that made the rounds in the media, I don't know, a few years ago. So there was a kid, long story short is he had a lot of trouble sleeping. He would have this recurring dream of being trapped in like the cockpit of a plane and it's on fire. And he was obsessed with World War II and dogfighting, and that's all he would draw is dogfights and planes on fire. And the parents were a bit concerned, but kids go through weird phases and whatever, but it wasn't going away. And when he got a little bit older, they started to ask him about it. Like, so what is it? Like, what is it about all this shit that, that matters so much to you? And he told them that he was in World War II, and he was shot down in Japan, and it was a very traumatic death, and he just isn't, he's stuck on this, right? And so the parents, who are very Christian, were like, okay, whatever, dude. But as it continued, they asked him, they got more information out of him, and he said, this was my name, this was the squadron or whatever that I was in. And so eventually they went and checked it out, and lo and behold, there was a person by that name in that squadron who got shot down over a bay in Japan. And so at that point they were like, whoa, wait a minute. This is, again, the kid he was young. I don't remember the exact age, 6, 7 years old. Like, there's no way this kid is making this shit up that he just, you know what I mean? So they also arranged, there was one, if I remember correctly, a guy Charlie something, who was still alive, who was in that squadron. They arranged a Skype call with their son, didn't tell him who the guy was. Hey, there's someone we want you to meet. He sees him on Skype and starts crying. Charlie, how are you? How's blah, blah? How's, how are your kids? And so at that point, the parents are just like, okay, we don't know exactly what this means, or why God has, why is this kid not in heaven, or why is he back? We don't know, but this happened. And so it ends with the story. There was a film company that bought the rights to make a movie about it, and they flew. The movie may have come out, actually. I don't know. I never saw it. It obviously wasn't some wide release thing, but they flew him out to Japan, where they found the bay where this plane, where he was shot down, his plane. They found the plane on the bottom of the bay, and he held a funeral for himself in his previous life. And afterward, that was the end of the dreams. That was the end of it for him. He was able, that was closure, and he was able to move on. So that's just one of the many stories that has come out of, and the many case studies that have come out of the UVA team that is looking into reincarnation.
Again, our paradigm is only as wide as what we're taught as children, right? So if nobody's ever explained this to you or tried to explain it to you, you can't believe it. So I don't doubt anything, man. Like, I live my life as a skeptic, but also an open-minded one. I don't know. I can't say yes, I can't say no, but it sounds like these things are very possible. I've had many things in my life happen that are just too coincidental to be coincidence, right? It's just, it's incredible. So who knows?
Synchronicity, right?
Yeah. And it just happens too often, man. Like there's no
remote viewing is another fascinating topic that has a lot of documented evidence. Like, there's no question that some people have been and are very good at this, and it's just how do you explain that?
And then you bring the question in, Mike, that what if everyone's good at that? But we're also.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, if you just, I've watched interviews with people who participated in the original, going all the way back to the original Stanford program, and then into the what was it? It was over here in Maryland, actually, is where then it was based out of. It had different names. Stargate was one of its names, right? And basically what he's saying is that he holds, even today, he holds seminars and he teaches people, and everybody has the latent ability, it seems. It's just some people can tap into it easier than others. Some people seem to have a talent for it, are just very good at it right out of the gates, and other people, it takes more time to develop.
Yeah. I think people have so many more abilities than we're aware of, but how many hours a day, Mike, do you spend by yourself exploring your thoughts, exploring your consciousness, exploring your feelings in your body? Like, nobody does that, right? Like, even
or I mean, doing anything other than writing articles, writing books, recording podcasts, just being busy. I mean, I've thought about that. If you just think about the paradigm of our society, is just, what if instead of let's just take all the advertising money and all the work and everything that goes into just demand for shit. What if all of that were channeled into something else, for example, into stuff that we're talking about?
It can't be, right? Because the world will ultimately be anarchy. I think that's maybe what happened.
Well, no, I mean, that's economics, though. I'm saying, like, we are in an economic system that it seems like its prime directive is to just expand, is just engulf everything, right? But it wouldn't necessarily have to be like that. It's just that's the system that we have right now, in my opinion.
I guess it would certainly take some time to change it, right? It would take some.
Oh, of course.
Shift. But ultimately, the powers that be don't want to lose the power, and if you keep allowing people to expand their consciousness and question the control of the governments or the direction of material goods and ultimately the economy.
I mean, social media, I'd say social media at this point, social media probably has, I mean, you have to say social media has more brainwashing power than anything else at this point, even more than mainstream media, probably, because mainstream media's audience is more limited than social media.
Yeah, man. It's, who knows? Like, and I think that the powers that be will always reign supreme because they'll always find a way to control the masses. I'm kind of, I've got some unique insights into what they call covert influence, meaning like, I've been studying that a little bit. Some people made me aware of it, and just like how we're influenced and we don't know about it. So I've been.
What do you mean?
social media, how they're intentionally influencing your thought process. You get it, man. Like Google's listening to your calls. They're influencing what you see, how the TV stations are influencing what you see, and even your conscious state, like always living in a state of fear and limitation, drives economy, right? It drives purchase. It drives impulsive behavior. Like the reason that media is so powerful and they want to control your conscious thought, because they don't want you to be thinking. They want you to be unconscious, so you purchase more things. They don't want you to be going down these spiritual journeys and start questioning your existence, because ultimately it doesn't drive the economy. Ultimately it drives anarchy, because if people start to question why people are putting limitations on them, and it's a huge cohort of people, it can cause a big shift in the world. So covert influences, if you just look it up, you'll find some interesting stuff around what's happening in the media, what's happening in social media, how they're literally building that into social media platforms, where like they're building the addictive behaviors in on purpose. It's so interesting.
Yeah, of course. I mean, these people are not our friends. We are their customers.
Exactly. And once you actually get to meet them or like get to talk to them, you realize just how bright these people are, man. Like, you're a bright guy, Mike. I consider myself a relatively bright guy. And, the fact that I think about it, I think puts me ahead of most people. Most people are just completely asleep to it. But when you're in a room with these people, you're like, holy shit. Like, these guys are so smart, so good at this one specific thing. And like, they can manipulate anything you do. Anything you see throughout the day at any time, and they're consciously doing it. And that's just interesting. I don't want to give my opinions on it, but it's very interesting that like that exists in the world. And which is why I'm sure you're aware of, like, man, I shelter the shit out of my kids. Like, I don't want my kids seeing TV. I don't want them on social media. Like, I want them to at least allow their brains to develop to the extent that they can be, high functioning human beings or adults in their adult lives, and not be guided through someone else's conscious desires. Anyways, not to get into the conspiracy stuff, but like that's ultimately what it is, man.
Yeah. And I don't like that. I think it's less of a pejorative now, though. Even the word conspiracy, but that's a conspiracy theory. Only an ignorant person says that. Period. I mean, somebody who's literally just ignorant of history, of mainline history. History is driven by conspiracies, period. You probably, the vast majority of all the major events in history that have shaped the world and gotten us where we are were conspiratorial in nature. There have always been, for example, people in power who conspire, by definition, work secretly behind the scenes to accrue more power and to crush their enemies and to shape the world in their image, or in, it's kind of like a paternalistic, where they think that because they're so smart, or because they have so much money, or because they've been so successful, they have the right ideas about how the world, and because they have the agency to do it, and they have the resources and the wherewithal to do it, that they should be the ones to determine where the world goes. And that's just human nature.
The other side of that, where it's like, it's almost better that they don't tell everybody, like think of 7 billion people being aware of some of the ongoings of the world. Like, if you're aware of some of the military stuff that goes on behind the scenes, you're like, if everyone knew that, the world would be fucking anarchy, man. Like, because the people are so, not a lot, but a lot of people are so low level education, or have such low level of education, that they would just turn into a complete chaotic existence. I think, like some of the fear-based things that actually exist that they hold from us. Like, I'm like, that's probably a good thing, man. That's probably a good thing.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, there's a need to know if you're talking about military stuff, but I think the problem is more that is, and I'm speaking from, having read thousands of pages of stuff on that. This has been a topic that I've been interested in for many years. And I just for anybody listening, if you want to get a taste of it from somebody who's, you could never just dismiss as a quack or quote unquote conspiracy theorist. Check out The Anglo-American Establishment by Carroll Quigley, who is a professor at Georgetown University. You can look in his bona fides. And he also, if you have the balls, read Tragedy and Hope, which he lays out how a very small group of people over the last 100, 150 years have taken over the world, basically. And again, look into who he is, and mean, Bill Clinton said that Tragedy and Hope was the most influential book he's ever read. That's the level. That's who Carol Quigley was, right? And so, as far as I'm concerned, I think the major issue is some of the most powerful people in the world, and really what that comes down to is people who have accrued so much wealth and then deployed it so intelligently that they can push the right buttons and pull the right levers to just cause to affect their will, basically, and whatever it is that they want to do. They're above governments, and they run in international financier circles, and that these people, their vision for the world is, to be specific, read Brave New World, or just Brave New World. That's it. That's their vision for the world. And Julian Huxley, who I think he founded UNESCO, one of the big higher ups in the UN early on. Aldous Huxley's brother straight up said that, oh yeah, Brave New World is a plan. This is a vision. It's not just a fiction story, and we see it unfolding before our eyes. And again, I think that the bigger plan is going to be great for a very small minority of people and very bad for a very large majority of people. And why that is probably because a lot of these people are psychopaths and sociopaths. A lot of these people that, again, you don't hear about them. They're on any Forbes lists, and they have incalculable amounts of wealth and power. And so, and if anybody listening going, oh yeah, conspiracy theory, I challenge you, read Carol Quigley's, and I could send you off down a rabbit hole to read a lot more stuff, but start there. And the reason why I love Quigley's work is because of who he was. You simply can't dismiss him as saying, oh, what the fuck did he know? Like, he had a top tier pedigree. So anyways, Carol Quigley, the Anglo-American.
We'll chatted about it another time. Yeah.
Anyways, now I'm just ranting about the state of the current state of things. But
and you can look back throughout the history of time and look at the people who have fancied themselves with a God complex, and that seems to be what it is, right? If you're raised in a family where, from the time you're born, you're told that you're special, you're told that you own the world, you're told that ultimately you can have anything you want, nobody can tell you what to do, you can tell anyone what to do. You've got maids, you've got servants, you've got whatever you want at any time. Eventually, by the time you're old enough to probably form sentences, you probably have some degree of superiority complex, and that can evolve in the wrong environment to someone who's just like, well, I'm going to do whatever the hell I want. Like, I can drive what I want. I'm above the law. I don't have to fucking pay attention. I can drive. I can literally do anything. And imagine where that could go, like in the wrong type of creative mind, where they're just like, oh, I want to run the world. I want to be the most powerful man in the world. I want to see, it ultimately becomes a game, or maybe it becomes just a conscious endeavor to, do their will. So interesting.
Yeah, it's a manifest destiny type of thing. John Rockefeller was very much like that. If you read Titan by Chernow, it's a good biography. Right. I mean, it's a kind of a whitewashed biography, but you get an absolute sense of that. He thought that he was blessed by God, basically, and that's why he was able to monopolize the oil refining industry, and that's why he was able to make all this money, and that it was his duty to get as rich as he possibly could, his duty to God. That's why he was placed on this earth, and with that also comes, again. That's what he wanted to do in oil refining. But what did he want to do in education? Oh, well, he could do that. What did he want to do? And it's not everything he did was bad, of course, and quite a bit of his philanthropy was beneficial, but it also quite a bit of it was not, and put an education system in place that we're still reeling from. Yeah, and anyway, so you see that, George Soros, another example, in one of his, I think it was a 60 Minutes interview, where he was saying he has a God complex. Yeah. He was just saying he has.
I'm going to read the Wikipedia quickly.
And you take that.
So it says, attended Harvard, where he got his BA, MA, and PhD. He taught at Princeton and then at Harvard. Served as a consultant to the U.S. Department of Defense, the Navy, and the Smithsonian. in the House of Select Astronautics and Space Exploration. So he's got,
Yep. And then he also, that's not even in his, and then let's see what he did at Georgetown
right. It
University.
says retired from Georgetown in '76.
Yeah, with foreign services, and founded that whole department.
What did he
and
die
then
of?
that became
did he die of old age, or did he get killed?
Actually, I don't know. Probably old age. I don't think he was killed. And the story of the book is interesting as well. Tragedy and Hope was the book that, and that's his magnum opus. That was his life's work. And the fact that it even
Sorry, which one was?
got Tragedy and Hope.
Okay.
So it's like 1,400 pages.
Oh wow!
And and scholarly. The fact that it got released was an anomaly. Because of who he was, it must not have gotten vetted, really. So it comes out, I think it was Macmillan publishes back in the 50s or 60s, comes out, and 1,400 page book. It's a tome, but because of the information in it, which is he was an interesting person in that he didn't disagree with the overall assessment of the world and what needed to be done, and even what was being done. He disagreed that it should be secret. He thought that it would be better if it were just known, and that people could then understand, look, this is the problem that we have. There are hard realities we have to deal with. I feel like now I'm talking with libertarians, right? Where libertarians say it sounds cute. It's a utopia. If you have high IQ, high agency, high trust, ethical people, you can have your libertarian utopia. That's not the fucking world. Libertarianism is just as workable as communism in my mind, right? So Quigley was saying, look, the assessment of what is wrong with the world and what do we need to do as a species to evolve and to not obliterate ourselves, basically, he agreed. And he even agreed, I think, overall with the plan. He just didn't think that it should be kept secret. He thought, hey, if we can educate people on how did all of these smart people, because you have these people at the top with all the money, and ultimately really and all the power, but you have think tank kind of roundtable groups full of very, very smart people that just sit around all day and think about the big problems that we are facing as a species and what do we do about it. And I do think that a lot of what comes out of that has a negative slant because of again, I do think that a fair amount of the people who are really in charge are just inherently bad people. And so they might say all the right things and you might think they have all the right intentions, but the results are ultimately just far more destructive than they are constructive, which for me is at least a decent definition of bad. You know what I mean? If something's bad, if it destroys more than it helps or harms more than it helps, destroys more than it creates, probably bad. Anyway, so Quigley then, he writes this book and just lays out, here's how these people have gotten into the position that they're in, names all of them. I mean, it's exhaustive, right? In detail, chronicles everything. Book comes out and it becomes an immediate bestseller, which is surprising for a 1,400 page book that is again, it's like academic reading. And then word gets around what's in the book, right? And so Macmillan, then there's pressure that's put on Macmillan. They tell Quigley, it's not selling, and we're not going to do any more print runs. And they actually destroy the plates as well. So the book is just killed, completely killed. And now it's back because I'm assuming it must be Quigley's estate. Because for a while, the only way you could get it, it was re-released later, but it was a redacted. Stuff was taken out. It was an edited, kind of abridged version, right? And the only way to get the original was you had to buy them used, and they were thousands of dollars. But now it looks like Quigley's estate, assuming that what you can buy on Amazon now, it says this is the original unabridged, and it looks like it's their estate finally got the rights back to publish it. So it's a wild. I mean that. And then he also wrote other books too. The reason why I recommend The Anglo-American Establishment is it's shorter. It's a couple hundred pages, and it gives you a taste. And if it's really something where it's like, if you can even conceive of the possibility, if you're willing to face that this might be reality, then keep going. If not, it's the quintessential Matrix moment, right? If you've just tasted the red pill. if you want more,
Sure.
keep going. If you don't like it, take the blue pill and just pretend like none of this is happening, and everything is just for the best, and all the free markets are just going to take care of everything, and we're going to be 3D printing cool stuff, and everything's going to be great. Okay.
Yeah. It's interesting because then you get guys like Bezos and Tony Hsieh coming in and becoming billionaires. And they're probably the guys who, or even Zuckerberg, could come in and actually influence some of the shit. And
I do
you
think
wonder, how their motivation is going to sway the world, because like these massive companies that come in so fast and ultimately become what they call the wealthiest people in the world. And you could argue that Bezos, just because he's listed as the most wealthy doesn't necessarily mean it's the truth. But
no, for anybody that just go poke around into the Rothschild fortune,
Totally.
for example, dwarf Bezos.
Yeah, because it's not just one person; it's distributed amongst probably 30 to 50 people, and but certainly dwarfs.
And innumerable trusts and holding companies,
right. And anyways, but you got to wonder if they can actually make a dent, and then maybe there's a hope, But yeah.
I think so. I mean, yeah, even let's take a guy like Bezos, right, with the wealth that he commands, and let's say if he were the people that he would be trying, I mean, at that point it'd be going up against would have many times that, but it's enough money to make a difference. If I mean, just a portion of it would be enough to make a difference if it were deployed intelligently.
Not the direction we were planning on going, Mike, but still a pretty awesome discussion, man. I'm sure you're listening.
a good way to, if people are still listening, it's because they want to still be listening. I think it's better to get into, we're just at the end having fun.
Yeah. And, if anyone questions the legitimacy of this stuff, is like, I'd start questioning your own thoughts, because, you don't have to, I find, I'm sure you get this a lot too. People will just come on, listen to something you say and discredit it rather than thinking about it. And hey, think about it. The fact that it's even a possibility, you don't have to judge it. You don't have to believe it or not, but at least start thinking about it and making an awareness around it. And I think living life that's informed and educated is absolutely essential, and always your choice whether or not you choose to let it influence your actions or not, right? But knowing is definitely step one in anything in life. And same thing with the stuff that I teach, man. Like, you can choose that, hey man, I don't want to know this stuff. Like, I choose to just train mindlessly and train like a monkey. But I think knowing it is step one in anything you do. So, this is why creating an awareness around as many things as you can in life is useful, and why people probably love your podcast.
Well said, and a nice wrap up. So let's just let everybody know where they can find you in your work.
I'll be the guy.
All right, do you have seminars coming up?
Yeah,
like,
I'll be the guy
what
with
kind
my
of stuff
nose
are you
in
up to?
Carol Quigley's book for the next 10 years. So if you want to find me,
again, start with Anglo-American establishment. That's a good
have
appetizer.
A really long beard and probably have all my electricity turned off and be reading by candlelight somewhere for the next.
But you'll finish the fucking book, all 1,400 pages. You'll be one. It's kind of like Atlas Shrugged. It's like a rite of passage. Is you're able to say, "I read Tragedy and Hope."
I'll be back in 10 years, and we're gonna have another podcast. My beard might be a little bit longer, it might be a little bit skinnier, but we're gonna do it, man.
Hey, you said last time we spoke, you said you wanted to maybe you're done losing muscle, but you wanted to lose muscle for a bit. There's a way to do it.
It's more just like the lack of necessity to walk around at 300 pounds. And people assume like, oh, you're going to stop competing, you're going to lose a bunch of muscle. That just doesn't happen, because my muscle was earned. It's 20 years of relentless dedication to what I did. And now, so I'm taking a much more relaxed approach to my fitness and nutrition, and training the way I feel is right, and still trying to maintain strength, maintain mobility. And my kind of articulation of what I'm trying to do with my life is brilliant mind, resilient body. So I want to have, the ability to read great books and have great conversations while still being able to do all the cool things I want with my kids. So that's that. And to answer your question, man, where people can find me, the Muscle Intelligence podcast is on iTunes, teaching people intelligent strategies to build their greatest body and live their greatest life. And muscleintelligence.com is launching very, very soon. The site is done. We're just finishing up the server details, so that may be out by the time you launch the podcast. And if not, mi40nation.com. So Muscle Intelligence is the extended version of MI40, which is short for Muscle Intelligence. So MI40 is the business. Muscle Intelligence is the new version. That's it. That's me.
Awesome, man. Thanks as always. It's fun chatting.
Dude, next time we'll schedule a 3-hour podcast and we'll talk about Quigley.
I like it. I like it.
All right, buddy. I appreciate your time, man. Thank you.
Hey there, it's Mike again. I hope you enjoyed this episode and found it interesting and helpful. And if you did and don't mind doing me a favor, then please do give this video a like and leave a comment down below. Not only do I like to hear from everybody and I jump in and reply to as many comments as I can, it also helps other people find their way to the show and learn how to build their best bodies ever too. And of course, if you want to be notified when the next episode goes live, then just subscribe to my channel and you won't miss out on any of the new content. Lastly, if you didn't like something about the show, then definitely shoot me an email at mike@muscleforlife.com and share your thoughts on how you think it could be better. I read everything myself and I'm always looking for constructive feedback, so please do reach out. Thanks again for listening to the episode, and I hope to hear from you soon. And lastly, this episode is brought to you by me. Seriously though, I'm not big on promoting stuff that I don't personally use and believe in, so instead I'm going to just quickly tell you about something of mine. Specifically, my fitness book for men, Bigger, Leaner, Stronger. Now, this book has sold over 350,000 copies in the last several years and helped thousands and thousands of guys build their best bodies ever, which is why it currently has over 3,100 reviews on Amazon with a 4.5-star average. So if you want to know the biggest lies and myths that are keeping you from achieving the lean, muscular, strong, and healthy body that you truly desire, and if you want to learn the simple science of building the ultimate male body, then you want to read Bigger, Leaner, Stronger, which you can find on all major online retailers like Amazon, Audible, iTunes, Kobo, and Google Play. Now, speaking of Audible, I should also mention that you can get the audiobook 100% free when you sign up for an Audible account, which I highly recommend that you do if you're not currently listening to audiobooks. I love them myself because they let me make the time that I spend doing stuff like commuting, prepping food, walking my dog, and so forth, so much more valuable and productive. So if you want to take Audible up on this offer and get my book for free, then simply go to www.bit.ly.com/freebls. And that will take you to Audible, and then you just click the sign up today and save button, create your account, and voila, you get to listen to Bigger, Leaner, Stronger for free.